watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Hello and welcome to Law Talk on Germantown Municipal Television. My name is Vince Perryman. I'm a local attorney with the law offices of J. Vincent Perryman. Each month, Law Talk focuses on a wide range of legal issues and topics. On today's show, we'll talk about the laws concerning domestic violence. With us now is attorney Larry Rice. Larry, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here.
So today's topic, domestic violence, I think it's kind of broad.
The advice is don't.
Yes.
Don't.
Yes.
Don't. It's very easy for people to lose their temper.
Mm-hmm.
It is very easy for a frustrated person to turn to violence. It is very easy for a physically superior, frustrated person to turn to violence. And that creates a lot of danger for everybody. I'm certainly not saying that every time there's any incident that everybody has to scrap that marriage and there's no redemption anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
A wife slaps a husband after 20 years of marriage. In all likelihood, he's probably deserved it for at least the last 10 years. But that is domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
That wife could be arrested for it. That wife could be taken off to jail. That wife could be prosecuted for it, okay? But that's not the circumstance that concern us the most. Mm-hmm. The circumstances that concern us the most are not a wife slapping the husband after 20 years of marriage, but a relationship where violence has become an accepted part of dealing with conflict. Mm-hmm. You get a very terrible dynamic in that situation. Normally what you see is pressure, stress, difficulties escalate. Then there's an incident. And the perpetrator feels very, very guilty. And there's the release of that violence, the anger that's pent up, and the guilty party suddenly becomes remorseful, buys flowers, is understanding, is attentive, and so the victim gets rewarded and it starts all over again. It's called a cycle, but to me it's a up, down, up, down. Here's normal behavior, mm-hmm. and it crosses back and forth. And one of the terrible things is you get people who build a lifetime with this as their normally accepted behavior. Mm-hmm. And the consequences of that are both short-term, somebody's getting slapped or physically hurt in some way. There's a tendency for it to sometimes escalate over time so that it's not a slap, it becomes a hit, it becomes a choke, mm-hmm. it becomes somebody seriously injured or somebody dead. You've got that danger over time. You also have over time children who watch this and accept that as the norm of marital behavior. Mm-hmm. And I say marital behavior, it could be relationship behavior. And that kind of problem is long-term beyond a lifetime. You've now created a situation where that problem can exist for generations mm-hmm. to come. So it's a bad thing, and it's a dangerous thing for any of the parties.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that, you know, we deal with these in divorces and everything, and generally, most of the time, I'm of the opinion that you got something that's kind of vanilla, and you don't think that it's something you need to talk to the public about. And then the other day, I had a case where it wasn't the husband and wife that were in the domestic violence relationship. It was the wife and her paramour in front of the children that were in the domestic. And it made me think, I'm like, why does she keep going back in this scenario? And I said, hey, you know, this is a good topic to discuss, not only what you can do legally to get help, but where somebody that's a victim can get help, and if you've got somebody that's a perpetrator, if they want to seek help, where they might go to.
Well, the best place for them to go to is a good therapist. Why am I putting up with being hit? That's if that's going on, you certainly need to ask yourself, why am I allowing that? And I think I set out the dynamics of why both people tend to get stuck in that cycle, because both of them are getting something out of it. And it becomes very easy for people who are not in that to go, well, why is the victim putting up with this? Well, you eventually understand that they're getting something out of it. One of the most heartbreaking things for young lawyers in divorce cases is to have that injured spouse come to you for a divorce case. And you move heaven and earth. You drop everything. You do everything that can be done. You get an order of protection. And they come in and they go back to the person. And it's almost universal in lawyers that handle divorce. And all of them, virtually all of them I know, have gone through that same cycle of investment in the problem, marshaling their assets to try to resolve it, and then having the person go back, which is just terribly heartbreaking because of the investment. And after it happens, depending on how much belief you have in humankind, it's not going to cure you the first time. It's not going to cure you the second time. Most lawyers who do divorce have seen it several times. And one of the tools in your arsenal is having the names of some good therapists to send people to. The Exchange Center, I think, is doing some good work in terms of group stuff, too.
Okay. Yeah, because I know they've always done a pretty good job when we've got supervised visitation with the child and things of that nature. You know, and that's the thing is I think the big thing is okay, well, what can you do legally is what we get stuck on so many times, and then it's, well, what can you do to help, period, you know. And that's the, you know, we've got our different counselors that are in this, and then having, I'm sure there's got to be some nonprofits out there if somebody can't really afford a counselor and things of that nature. You know, so it's one that it's a bigger problem, like you said, because my concern with the case that I was talking about was we've got these two kids that they've seen their parents be fairly normal with one another, and they've got this outside influence that they're now watching as their norm, and you got to worry about what they've seen, and they may have post-traumatic stress from it. So,
oh, that's entirely true.
Yeah. I'm getting the wrapped up signal here for this part. So when we return, we'll continue our discussion on domestic violence. Please stay with us.
This is the story of a boy who was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. It made him feel uncomfortable. One day, he found out he had something called autism. His family got him help, and slowly, he learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
All the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. I'm Vince Perryman and you're watching Law Talk. Joining us on our show is attorney Larry Rice. We're discussing domestic violence. Larry, before the break, we were talking about sort of the needs and how domestic violence works in general. When somebody comes to you as a client and they're saying, you discover that they're a victim of domestic violence or domestic violence is included, where do you start with that?
Well, one of the things we start with is we've changed our advice about staying in the house.
Okay.
Traditionally, we used to advise people that were hoping to get the house or to get a half interest in the house to stay in the house. Mm-hmm. These days, with the hair trigger on domestic violence, that advice has changed. If you're going to stay in the same house, you've got to stay on guard during the divorce. Because the flip side of the abysmal event that is domestic violence is the abysmal event of a false allegation. Mm-hmm. And so many times we see that where you start being successful representing a party and the other party feels trapped. And so they will make a false allegation. So if you stay in the home while there's a divorce pending, or you got the idea the divorce is coming, mm-hmm. be very, very careful. False allegations occur frequently, and they occur even before it starts. Oddly enough, sometimes I've represented men who've been told by their spouse, if you don't do X, I'm going to make an allegation that you beat me. Mm-hmm. Now, they say it in regular language, not lawyer language like
right.
that. And that's big red flag, big red flag. They warned you it's coming. And even more bizarrely, they will warn you again. And when that happens, the best shield you have is your cell phone. Mm-hmm. You know, we used to talk about, well, so-and-so is going to go in wired. Oh, well, that's a big deal. Everybody's wired now.
Yep.
All you have to do is turn on, and you don't even have to turn on the audio recording. You can turn on the video, which is really, really easy to do. And just because you don't have it pointed out at somebody doesn't mean it's not picking up stuff in your pocket. Now, recording in your pocket are not that great. Mm-hmm. But if somebody says to you, if you don't do such and such, I'm going to call the police, I'm going to cut myself and tell them it was you. If you have a recording of that, when the police shows up, you can play that. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest about what happens when the police show up. The police are now mandated to arrest somebody. If they don't arrest somebody, they have to have a real good reason to do it. Statistically, men are much more likely to be the abuser than the abuse victim. Mm-hmm. Statistically, they're also more likely to be the recipient of a false abuse claim than the female partner is. So if you're a man and the police show up, you're already less than half on the field. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a significant likelihood that you're the one who's going to be arrested. The critical thing is if you have one of these recordings, it's time to play it, and it's time to be calm. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you've had to munch Valium like they're cornflakes. Be calm. Don't have alcohol on your breath. Be calm. And when the police show up, wait, be polite, talk to them calmly. If you've got a recording of you being threatened, or you've got, and sometimes right before they'll call, they'll go, I'm going to call the police. And you say, well, I haven't done anything. And you'll get a, I don't care you hadn't done anything, I'm still going to call the police. Well, that, when the police see that, they don't like that, okay? The police will tend to arrest the most aggressive person. So if you've actually been abused, the same thing applies to you. Be calm. I have seen situations where a person was abused, really was pushed, really was shoved, and called the police. And when the police showed up, she was so mad about being pushed and shoved, she started screaming at the police, as mad people will tend to do, and achieved being arrested, although she had been the person who'd been abused themselves. So that's segment 2, what to do when it's present in the household. And that's that's not so much legal as practical information. This is your best shield. One other great thing you can do with this is if you see the circumstances start to escalate, you can say, wait a minute, I'm turning this on. I'm recording you and I'm recording me. And we both need to be calm because there's a recording of it. And if you're dealing with a person with some access to their rationality, that can work. If they don't have any access to their rationality and they're getting ready to scream at you, but with you calmly saying, I'm recording this, so let's both be calm, and them going, well, I don't care what you're recording, I'm still going to da-da-da-da-da-da-da, then you have a recording to play for the police when they show up. Be careful when you come to your lawyer with recordings. We have people from time to time show up with recordings and say, this is great, my wife called me a so-and-so word that I shouldn't use on this program. And you go, really? Have you got a recording of that? Yes, I do. How long's the recording? 10 minutes. Okay, when did she call you that? Well, it's the end of the 10 minutes. All right, I give it to my paralegal. My paralegal listens to it. She comes back and goes, I can certainly understand why she called him that, because the way he was behaving, I think she can defend on the basis of truth, okay? So, you know you are being recorded, so you better be really calm and really on your best behavior if you're trying to produce a recording to use in this situation.
And I think in today's world, it's the same thing that when I was in law enforcement, we were always taught to act as if we were on camera.
Yes.
And that was before the cameras. And now
before they're actually
everywhere.
on camera.
Yeah. So that's something to always remember, act as if you're being recorded. So when we return from our break, we'll talk more with Larry about domestic violence. Please stay with us.
I'll be right back.
Hi. You think you're probably sober?
Yeah.
But you're thinking about taking the back roads home, just in case. If you're probably sober, then why would you do that? Good choice.
Probably okay isn't okay. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
That's a full glass of wine. I'll be chatting you later.
So we were walking to school.
I started thinking about lunch. Mom packed me turkey and cheese.
She's
I really want
smart.
cheese pizza.
Sometimes her mind wanders.
We should have a sleepover.
I remember saying, Laura?
I think I heard Mom say something.
The sign says don't walk.
Sometimes it's so overwhelming.
I really hope she doesn't
I
have
really
another
hope I
bad
don't
day
have another
at
bad day at
today.
school today.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. Go to understood.org, a free online resource with support and tools to help your child thrive.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. With us now is Larry Rice. We're talking about domestic violence. So Larry, we're talking about what to do in the moment there, and I guess we've kind of touched on if you're in a situation, you're being accused of it, or you're having it occur. So what can we do legally to keep it from occurring, or how does the legal system affect?
Well, you've got domestic violence laws, and domestic violence laws reach beyond just he hit me, or she put broken glass in my cereal. It reaches to things like stalking. Okay, if someone is continuing to make an unwelcomed communication, and they're on notice it's about an unwelcome communication, and they still continue to persist, that can trigger an order of protection. And once you get that order of protection, further contact becomes very serious, and there's a lot of jeopardy to a person who violates an order of protection. You can wind up in jail. You can wind up in jail for a long time. One of the hidden traps for that is what happens to your gun rights, your Second Amendment rights. The judges are better about it than they used to be, but for years we only had one judge who would inform people that once that order of protection got entered, you lose your Second Amendment rights. You become the equivalent of a felon in possession of a firearm for criminal purposes. And as you well know, if you're a felon in possession of a firearm, you can get federal time. And that's separate and apart from any further domestic abuse. If you then abuse someone and there's an order of protection, it's like a multiple word score in terms of the punishment you can get for it. But circling back to the Second Amendment issues, what often happens is someone's applying for an order of protection. A judge looks at a situation, you got a he said, she said, which are so impossible for a judge often to know what actually happens. And so the judges would go, well, okay, I'm going to issue an order of protection for both of you. Neither one of y'all want to be around each other. Is that okay by you? And the parties go, yes. And they don't realize that at that point, their Second Amendment rights are over. And there's debate about whether an expungement of that can restore your Second Amendment rights, but it's problematic. What are you going to do if you're found with the gun, they search the records, they come up with the order of protection, they don't find the expungement? There's been a clerical error. Then you're looking at being arrested, potentially you're looking at a bunch of time. So that order of protection creates a jeopardy that not everybody realizes. So we found ways around it. And the most common way, and it's interesting, it's not provided for in statute. In fact, the statute almost says you're not supposed to do it. But it exists both here and in other parts of the state. Everybody seemed to have independently figured out the same thing. The ex parte order doesn't trigger any of those Second Amendment prohibitions. It doesn't trigger a lot of those really nasty ramifications of an order of protection, but it gives protection. So what a lot of us have learned to do is when somebody gets an ex parte order of protection, and an ex parte means the other side doesn't know what's happening. So at the beginning of a divorce, one party approaches the court, gets a temporary order of protection, ex parte order of protection. You have to have a hearing within 15 days. If you appear for that hearing and they agree to continue that temporary order, which if you read the statute, I really don't think we're supposed to do.
Right.
But if you continue it, it keeps the protection in place for everybody, but it doesn't trigger those long-term problems, which, if you're representing the person making that allegation, has a very significant benefit for you. You're holding that allegation over the other side's head. You behave, you might get all this taken care of, and you can go duck hunting next season. You misbehave, this goes forward, and you don't get to duck hunt anymore unless you can do it with a slingshot.
Right.
Okay? And for the other side, it gives them a potential way to get out of it so they can go duck hunting next year. So those are some of the things that are involved. One of the other problems you have is you get a domestic violence complaint going on in the criminal system while you've got the order of protection floating around in the civil system. What kind of problems can you have with that? Well, one of the problems you have is bail conditions that are issued with the criminal matter almost always include you're going to have to stay away from each other or you violate your conditions of bail and then you go back to jail, okay? You want to get divorced, right? Now, apparently, neither one of these people love each other. They can't stay together, so they're going to get divorced. They can't agree to divide everything. Vince, where do they have to go if they can't agree to everything?
They got to go to court.
But before you have to go to court, where do you have to go?
Mediation, unless otherwise
And
waived.
both people are where at mediation?
They'd be in the same office.
And that would be a violation of what?
The bail conditions.
Bail conditions, yeah. So what we've done, what I believe we have to do now, is you have to get a order modifying the bail conditions, and we've got one right now where we got an order modifying the bail conditions and an order allowing the parties to modifying the order of protection that actually allows the parties to talk to each other at mediation. But without taking that extra step, you bring your client to mediation like we think we're supposed to do, and it goes wrong, well, the other side could go, well, that son of a gun was around me. I saw him. He was running with that lawyer buddy he's got. We were in the same room, and it made me cry.
Yeah.
Bingo.
And that is a perfect place for us to wrap up because it shows like how complicated this can be and why you need to go get an attorney that does this sort of work to represent you. So, you know, our time is up for this edition of Law Talk, and I'd like to thank our guest for taking time out of his busy schedule and being with us and sharing his thoughts and insights. If you'd like more information about Law Talk or any other program on Germantown Municipal Television, please refer to our website at www.gmtvonline.org. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to join us next month for more legal topics. Until then, I'm Vince Perryman, and thank you for watching.